So, Dee, when last we spoke 2 weeks ago, you had a Maddie gardening story, and I said, hold that till the next episode.
You did. And for those who don't know, she's my granddaughter. So she comes over all the time because she lives literally down the street. And she was looking around for something in the garden and she suddenly said, "Hey Gigi, is this plant real?" And I had my back to her watering and I thought, "Huh?"
Huh? And you said, what are you talking about?
I said, "Everything in this garden is real." And then she was looking at an echeveria, and they do look kind of space agey, right? So I said, "Go ahead and touch it." And she goes, and she touched it because they kind of feel velvety for
Uh
like,
huh.
and she goes, "It's amazing and so beautiful. I can't stand it."
Oh my God. Kids know how to describe plants the best way, don't they?
They do, especially when they're just 5 years old.
That's true. So, well, anyway, we'll see if we can describe some plants in this week's podcast episode, which I am now going to begin. Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we chat about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, and I still have a large garden out in the country. It's just a bit smaller.
We are garden angelists because we love gardening. We want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But let's move on to this week's episode. Carol, what is the temperature there? And how does your garden grow?
So the temperature here, I have to go look. It's not as warm as it was yesterday. And I'm looking. It is 66 degrees, heading for a high of 68, and it is raining.
That's funny because in Oklahoma right now, it is 65 degrees and headed for a high of 75. Isn't it funny how sometimes our temperatures are so
Yes.
close? Okay, so
Yes,
tell
it
me
is.
about your garden this week. We took last week off. We should
We
say
took
that.
we took last week off. It was all hands on deck for me to get ready for hosting the big Easter egg hunt on
Me
Saturday
too. Yeah.
afternoon, which was the rainy day of the weekend. So, but a good time had by all, and they had like a little bit of time when it stopped raining. They ran out there to look for four-leaf clovers because Aunt Carol pays $1 a four-leaf clover, and my one nephew, great nephew, found one, and I paid up. But anyway, this past Monday, and I knew our forecast looks phenomenal. I mean, are we frost free? One would
Mm.
hope so. Otherwise, there are going to be some people
Hmm.
that are really mad, including my youngest sister who had Monday off. So I knew she was going to text me Sunday. She want to meet me at the greenhouse on Monday morning. I'm like, okay. So we went and she bought a whole wagon full of stuff, and I bought some geraniums
Yep.
and an ostrich fern. I was very, very good. I've
You
got
were
my
good.
I was very good because I knew I was going to be back and it wasn't very busy on that Monday morning. And I says, tell no one about this Monday morning not being very busy. Anyway.
That's when I like to go to the garden. Actually, I like to go on Tuesday because most places get their plants on Tuesday.
Uh-huh.
And I love a good plant shipment. I've heard that one of the box stores here got a plant shipment yesterday, which would be Thursday. So that's unusual. But anyway, I want you to tell the next part about hardening off the onion seedlings. For our listeners who don't know about hardening off, could you please share how you harden off?
So I harden off probably not as well as I should, but after they've been growing inside, those plants are like, they're soft, they're weak. They're just not used to bright sun. So you want to put them outside in some shade so they can kind of get used to the breezes and stuff and the temperatures. And then, every day give them a little bit more sunlight. Mine is like every day they're going to sit out there on the patio and where I've got them. And probably by the weekend, maybe early next week, I'll plant them out in the garden. I also finally planted out the caladiums, the cannas, and the elephant ears that I had bought at Costco several weeks ago. And I
Mhm.
grabbed those bags that were in the sunroom, and the one bag, there was a big canna leaf coming up out of the side that broke through the plastic bag and found the hole and was growing out of it. So I had to cut the bag to get the darn thing out of there. But so
Cannas
that's
want to
done.
grow. Cannas want to
Yeah.
grow.
And then
Very much so.
the folks at Muck Boots sent me some Muck Duck camo style garden croc style shoes. they're a
Hmm.
little bit too big. I think I got I ordered the wrong size, but they sent me a sample to try and I'm like, these will be pretty good for just putting on very quickly to run out and do something and then come back in. And then you don't really feel, you just leave them parked by the door. So I'm pleased to get those and we'll have put a link to those because they're pretty nice, pretty
I got
thick.
some last year and they were a little taller and they're really good for tickwear, which I think we're going to discuss tickwear a bit more later in the podcast
Yeah.
or maybe the next podcast. It seems like I've been talking to everybody about tickwear. So back to the hardening off. Are you through? I don't want to interrupt.
And you probably have something you want to add on the hardening off?
No, I want to agree with you. And I want
Oh,
to say
okay.
thank you. Thank you for demystifying it because, okay, so when you read about hardening off, it's literally take the plants out, sit them in the sun for an hour, bring them back in. Take them
Mhm.
out, sit them out in the sun. Okay, that's all, in my opinion, BS. Because the truth is, you take them out in the sun for an hour here, our late April sunlight, they're going to be fried little puppies, first of all. And secondly, you're going to forget to bring them back. I don't care if you even remind yourself on your watch, you just are. And I say this from experience. So, what I do is I take mine out and I stick them in the shade. And then I
Right.
say, good luck, darlings. And I just make sure that they've got water and I leave them in the shade for a day or two. And then I go plant them in the garden because you know what?
Yeah.
It's all hands on deck right now.
It is all
I
hands on
need,
deck.
yeah.
Now remember, these are the onion seedlings that I planted in the seed rolls. So
Yes,
they're actually I'm very pleased with this method
it's a
of
good method.
growing them. So I'll be interested to see how they make it out in the garden.
And I planted them a month ago and mine are doing great. They're just chugging along and they'll eventually make onions. It just takes a
Good.
long time when you grow them from seed,
That's
but you get
true.
really good onions. So there's that. And is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I want to hear about what you've done. Probably just
I
sitting
did.
around eating bonbons and reading books
Yeah,
and
totally. Eating oat milk ice cream. That's what I'm doing. Okay, so I don't know what all I did this week. I worked so hard and I told Michelle not to come because it's been so wet and it's just complicated. And it was great to be out there all by myself because I can just putter and do what I want to and I don't have to supervise someone. And while I appreciate the help, it's nice to be out there by myself. So I planted almost everything from Bustani Plant Farm and Big Creek Nursery. You're going to laugh at this part. So I bought a rose called the True Gratitude Rose. And really, what's funny, the reason I bought it is I wanted a ping lim rose because he's a very famous hybridizer and he's really good at hybridizing things you don't have to take a lot of care of, right?
right?
Just the standard care, not the extra care. And I thought, oh, true gratitude, because that's really how I feel since I've been on Zolair. I feel true
Uh-huh.
gratitude to God
Right?
because I can get out and do things now and I'm not so inflamed all the time. And then I bring it home and I look on the tag and it's a climber. I actually looked it up online first and I was like, you bought a climbing rose, you have nowhere to put a climbing rose. Okay. So I actually stuck it at the end of one of my Vaco beds.
Yeah.
It's over closest to the house. It's really not the best for a vegetable garden because it gets a little more shade than I'd love for it to get. And that climber will just climb out of there. And then I had to laugh at myself because I am putting flowers in vegetable gardens yet again. This is what I always do. Always.
Well, yes, because and I just laugh because I'm if I had like all the time in the world, I
Hmm.
would say 50% of our podcast episodes you are like, I bought a rose.
Yeah.
I
Well,
bought a
it's either
rose.
I bought a rose or a pelargonium or now a begonia because I'm into those too.
Yeah,
Oh,
way to
and I
go.
found, yeah, lucky me. And then on top of that, okay, so I got all my stuff from Select Seeds, all my plants. I know you did too. I planted all of that, and there were some pelargoniums in there, and there were a couple of begonias, some different ones. And then what else did I do? Oh, I planted around my Marion garden, my Mary, my statue,
Yeah.
and I did a little video on it. So that's on Instagram. We'll link to it. And yeah, it's just been busy, man. Really busy.
Yeah, and I feel like I was busy getting ready for Easter leading up to Easter because I had to fit 32
Me
people
too.
in my house with
Hmm.
chairs and tables, and it's
I've
kind of
done that. It's
crazy.
really hard. Yeah.
And then
It's a
it's
lot of
like
work.
I've been like resetting this week, resetting and getting ready to for the next big push. And it's like I'm happy. I think it's frost free, but it's like, okay, everybody calm down. I haven't got my stuff yet at the greenhouse. So
Yeah, because you got to decide on those tomatoes. So
no, I
I'm
got
still,
tomato seedlings. They're doing great.
I know, but you got to decide whether you're going to put them, when you're going to put them outside.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, not for a long time.
So mine are outside, except some, because I've got a few inside that I haven't put out yet, and they've got to be done. So it's that time for me. I'm just a little bit ahead of you, and it's that time of year where it's like I got to get everything in the ground as soon as possible before this rain stops, because it's going to stop. And right
So
now the sun is out, so it's go time at my house.
so let's just like simmer down. We're starting to get
Simmer,
ourselves
simmer.
hyperventilating with everything we have to do. Let's play favorites.
Okay, you go first, and then I'll go.
So my favorite, and I've put like three things on there and I've taken them off. So I'm gonna say it's the tulips in the back garden in the perennial beds because they've been coming up here and there, and there's not much other color, and they are repeat bloomers as far as they have come back for multiple years. And I thought, it looks pretty nice to see those out there. And there's some double flowering ones. I think I'm gonna give a shout out to those tulips.
Good for you. I love tulips. And I've decided, as I was planting the Marion garden with the summer stuff, I've
Uh-huh.
decided that I'm going to buy pink and black tulips again to put around Mary because that was the prettiest display I ever did. And it was, oh gosh, I'll have to think of what the pink petunia was. Probably pink impression because that's one of the really strong pink ones. And I put in, it's a black tulip that is a double, which I would be able to think of if I wasn't trying. If I wasn't looking at my favorite, would you like to hear?
I can see, and I would like to hear exactly what this is.
This is honey petunias. It's a super tunia, which means you can't grow it from seed because it would be a proven winners hybrid. And here's the thing about Supertunia honey. It's not a Vista Supertunia, so it doesn't spread a whole lot. I'm going to link to it so you can go over there and look. All right, so there it is. Pretty little thing. And on top of that, but here's it's not as easily found as it well, okay, I don't think it was ever easily found. It is a fan favorite in Oklahoma because it can handle the heat for a long time. It does spread a little, but it's the color. It changes color as it grows.
It
It's
looks beautiful.
pinks and yellows and peaches. And it was so pretty night before last that I made Bill come outside and look at it. And Bill still has a walker. And I said, you've just got to see the honey petunias. Bill doesn't know those from Adam, but
Yeah.
whatever.
We'll put a picture of yours on the newsletter and put a link, and then everybody can drive themselves crazy trying to find honey petunias, like I will
Yeah.
probably do.
I found them at Davison's nursery, just to let people know. Sometimes they're at Westlake Hardware, but not always. All right, so let's go to our questions. We have several, don't we,
We have
of the
three we're
week?
going to answer today. We're going to have
Okay,
three.
I'm going to ask the first one because you're going to answer it.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, ladies. I recently purchased a Duranta and a Lantana. This is only remarkable because both of them have been trained in topiary form, which that does work really well, by the way. They are awfully cute. Yes, they are. My question is, does the topiarization, I love that word, of these plants change their normal care and maintenance? I'm an 8B, so lantana comes back from the roots for me quite frequently. I guess if this one does that, it won't be a topiary anymore. Looking forward to a tickling topiary time in the garden. God bless. From Tuscaloosa, Alabama. That was the cutest question ever.
That is. And she is absolutely correct. If those plants are only root hardy, and I don't even think the Duranta would be root hardy, I think it's more tropical. But if they come back from the roots, they are not coming back as pretty little topiaries. So that may or may not be okay with her. Those topiaries, they take a lot of time and pruning, and that's why they are more expensive when you go to buy them. So enjoy them. I'd say enjoy them both as annuals. Slim possibility, depending on what kind of a house you have, that you could take them inside and overwinter them. But that's as we like to
You could
say that.
try it in a sunroom or
Uh,
a west facing window. You
yeah.
could try it. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, truthfully, I've I know, for example, the OSU Botanical Garden back when Steve Owens was on Oklahoma Gardening, he created a topiary form of lantana, and that thing was in the garden. I actually have a picture of it, and I'll see if I know where it is. I'll find it for the newsletter. That thing he kept it alive for years. He may still have it. And it was really beautiful in the garden. He would underplant it. So the point of this is he would dig it up every year and take it into the greenhouse. So if you have a
Yes.
greenhouse, that would work. And then he'd bring it back out. And sometimes it was in a pot, sometimes it was in ground. He a lot of times would underplant it with it was a new gold, so it was yellow. And he'd underplant it with blue days, which is evolvus. I mean, he did some really great things. So our other two questions are on my phone. Should I get them?
Yes. Well,
Or
you have a question about keeping weeds out of your paths was one of the
okay, so
questions.
we'll do that question. I have weeds in my paths. People think I don't have weeds in my paths because maybe they don't see them, but yeah, I definitely have weeds in my paths. So I can't keep them completely out. I do dig them up. In fact, that's a good meditative thing to do on a pretty day. I sit out in the paths with my bucket and my giant tool and I dig them out. You can also spray them, but the thing is it's not glyphosate, and so it's not as effective as it used to be, in my opinion. Also, a lot of people don't want to spray chemicals on their paths. I don't blame them. You can also use a blowtorch, propane blowtorch. If it's wet outside, that will kill them, but that only kills them to the roots. So that will only kill your annual weeds. The best thing to do about Bermuda grass is to have lots of barriers, and people always ask me about landscape fabric underpaths. Yes, that works, but it won't stop the weed seeds from coming in. Also, one more thing, my paths are made of gravel, which I would not use river rock or pea gravel on my paths anymore. I got that for free 1,000 years ago, and so I
Right.
used it because it was free. I would use decomposed granite. It does not sprout weeds as quickly as my stuff does. So that's everything I know about weeds and paths.
I would add to that, Dee, do not use the blowtorch thing if you have mulch in your paths instead of rocks. You'll just
Oh my
catch
God,
something on
no.
fire. Don't be doing stuff like that. Don't think you're just going to stamp it out. Don't be doing that.
And nothing smothers weeds totally. You can put more bark down in your paths if you use bark each year, but I wouldn't want to do that here because of ticks. I think it would be a nesting ground for ticks. And one of the places I feel safest in my garden is on the rock paths or the brick paths because ticks don't really like hot surfaces.
Well, that does lead into your final question. You had a question about ticks, and you said you felt like you've been answering tick questions all week. But
Yeah.
what was the question? And I think
Hmm.
know the answer probably.
I probably know the answer. So somebody asked me about tick prevention, and I wrote them a pretty long information, but I'll sum it up really fast.
Okay.
Okay, so DEET doesn't work as a preventative. Picaridin, which is a different ingredient, works better and also has no scent, which is great because DEET stinks. And also, I find it hard to breathe in. I do not find picaridin to be a problem. Essential oils aren't enough against Lone Star ticks. So, those are all the sprays on exposed skin because you will always have some exposed skin. To prevent them on to prevent them on your body the rest of the way, you want to wear permethrin bonded clothing or sprayed clothing. Do not use permethrin spray on your skin. It is a pesticide. Bonded, it doesn't leach into the skin. The spray only lasts 5 to 6 washes. Bonded, it lasts the life of the clothing. I buy insectshield.com clothing or I send in my clothes to them to be bonded. I have an affiliate code. It's DNASH RDR, all one word. It's in the bottom of our notes and it's in the Substack, bottom of the Substack. For your property, quickly, there's a lot of stuff online about putting up barriers of wood mulch, and that seems to work better with black-legged ticks. They really don't have a lot of information out there about Lone Star ticks. Almost if you live in the woods, which I just had a client yesterday who was in the woods, I wore my
Right.
full tick clothing out there and cautioned her because she had on flip-flops. I was like, I used to garden in flip-flops. Don't do that. It's not good for your feet anyway. But
No.
Bill actually had a tick on his toe this week.
Yeah,
So
that's what you said. You'd sent me a text or something. We were talking.
yeah, they're out there. And so you need to be careful, especially if you live in wooded areas. I hate to bring up pesticides, but here's my attitude about it. I hate pesticides, but if you're going to use them, I would hire a professional company
I would definitely hire a professional company as well.
because they spray less, they lay down fewer granules, they know the application rate. You get on a program and they'll come out 4 times a year, and
Right.
they know the hatching rates, which is what
Right.
they're trying to prevent. So if you decide to use pesticides, there's that. One more thing. Lone Star ticks are not like black-legged ticks or dog ticks. They're just not. Although we did get new information that other ticks spread alpha gal too.
Yeah,
That's
this is
new.
just delightful to know.
It's just delightful. But Lone Star ticks lay thousands and thousands of eggs. These little suckers all come alive about the same time, and then they create something called a tick bomb. And if you step in it, you have thousands of ticks crawling up your legs. Two-sided carpet tape really helps on your jeans.
That is just like the most horrifying image ever. Are we
It
done with the
is.
answers to this
We
question?
are done. Done. Okay, move on. Let's move on to something pleasant, shall we?
I will do a quote and we'll talk about flowers.
Let's do.
Believe there is a great power silently working all things for good. Behave yourself and never mind the rest. Beatrix Potter.
That's an interesting quote.
Yeah, especially after that tick discussion.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what the good Lord was thinking about ticks, but whatever. Okay, so flowers. G is for,
Yeah, we're on the letter G now. Geraniums.
which is pelargoniums, and their cousins, which are
Yes.
perennial.
Yeah. So we're really just going to talk about geraniums, the pelargoniums, right?
Yes,
So we're kind of treating on the letter
I'm
G. But
doing the
anyway,
pelargonium dance.
I didn't know there was a pelargonium dance, but
There is.
we're going to link to some blog posts that you have about pelargoniums. And then
I love them.
I've been writing in my weekly newsletter because I write a little bit each day. And since I got
Hmm.
the pelargoniums yesterday from Select Seeds, I feel like I'm old enough now to grow pelargoniums because people do, let's face it, think about it as an old lady flower.
And I've grown them since I was in my 20s. You know what
Yes.
started me on pelargoniums?
I cannot even think what would have started you on pelargoniums.
So in Guthrie, there was this antique store that was in a former house of ill repute. I kid you not. And it was called Miss Lizzie's Boarding House because the
Uh-huh.
ill
Yeah.
repute was Miss Lizzie. All right. So it had these little rooms inside, and each little room had all these great antiques. And I was in my 20s. I've always liked antiques. I've always been a grandma. I've always embraced grandma core. We just didn't know what it was. So out front of Miss Lizzie's boarding house were two giant pots, and they had the most fantastic fuchsia pelargoniums in them. I mean, we're
Uh-huh.
talking big mamu type
Right,
pelargoniums.
right, right.
And then next to them, they had asparagus fern. And I was a relatively new gardener in my 20s, even though I started with houseplants in my teens. I didn't know what I was doing, but I wanted to replicate that exact look, and I did for several years. But then I didn't realize it was a giant rabbit hole because pelargoniums come in everything.
They do. And I will tell you that my entree into the pelargonium world is we had a long box, planting box on our front porch growing up, and my dad always put pelargoniums in there, geraniums.
We
And the
call them
fun
geraniums. Yeah.
the geraniums, let's just call them geraniums. But
Okay.
anyway, and they were always big and beautiful. And one of the neighbor ladies is like, how come your geraniums are always better than mine? And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders. But then later he said to us kids, he says, because I buy the best ones I can find and she buys the cheapest she can find.
So that's probably the first best tip. try to find really good big plants, unless, of course, you're trying to find some unusual thing that you have to order through the mail. Then you're
Yes.
going to get plants that you have to baby, but it'll be okay. Scented geraniums are the easiest of the group to grow, absolutely easy. Have beautiful scented leaves. I have mine on a little theater and I take cuttings of from them every year. I've had topiaried ones. They are I really love them the most. But please don't tell the zonals that they would hurt their feelings or the Martha
Well,
Washingtons.
let me just say, because I was gonna say the two that the three the four that you would most likely find would be scented, which is grown for the foliage, and there's a lot of variation in the
Cute
foliage.
little flowers.
Cute little flowers. Second would be the
Zonal.
zonal, which is the old-fashioned geraniums. Those are grown from cuttings and, nice big plant. And then third would be the seed geraniums, and that was like a big deal when those came out. It is a smaller plant. It's not going to get as big as the
But it's cool
zonals.
and they're tough.
They're very tough. Then there's the
Mhm.
Martha Washington types, which tend to be kind of expensive, but the most I think of those as kind of foliagey.
And they're fussy and they have different types of leaves. They're kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, they're zigzaggy leaves and they have different kinds of blooms and the blooms look
Right.
sometimes two-tone. There's a lot of variation in the
And
Martha
then
Washington group. There's
and
another one.
then
Yeah.
there's the ivy
I,
geraniums,
I
which
was
are
going to say, bring up the ivies. Yeah,
they're
those are
for
hard.
hanging baskets. And so if you go to the where I go, courtyard and greenhouse, she's got the zonal geraniums for the pots and things, and then she's got tons of hanging baskets. And so she uses the type for hunting the ivy type for
Okay,
the
so I'm going to
hanging
give
baskets.
a bit of cautionary stuff for people in Oklahoma. You cannot grow the ivy type in baskets, hanging baskets. You can grow it in a pot. It is going to hang over because that's what it does. It is definitely a spiller. And on top of that, you're going to want to put it in some partial shade. They don't like to get too hot and they are so beautiful. And then also the Martha Washingtons, again, partial shade. And on top of that, I mean, they just are fussy little wheat turkeys. And so just don't get your feelings hurt if they don't go for you.
Right. The other thing I will say about geraniums is during the growing season, they would like a little bit of fertilizer, and you need to
Absolutely.
deadhead them and get in there. They'll have
Regularly.
some little leaves to dry up, clean them up periodically. So if you like to fuss around a little bit with your plants and have something to do, you can trim off those dead flowers and pull out some few dead leaves that might show up. It's not like petunias. Petunias used to have to be deadheaded, but then they came out with the quote unquote self cleaning petunias where they more or less
Some do,
don't.
some don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
it depends. I go ahead and pinch off my petunias as they go because truthfully, they still want to make seed heads sometimes. Depends
Yeah.
on the petunia. Anything else you want to say about geraniums? They're just so much fun.
No, except that I bought 4 geraniums at the greenhouse and then I got the 6 that came in. Then I have a few that overwintered in the garage. But at
Ooh, you're
Aldi
you're
this
all in this year.
at Aldi, they had these plant shelves and this like a 3-tier shelf. Now I know just by the size of the box, they're not as big a shelf as I want, but I convinced myself that for $25, that was probably the way to go with my quote unquote theater. It's probably not as big as I want. Maybe I should have bought 2 and put them side by side. But anyway, we shall see.
You can always go back. There will be more
You do not
unless
understand the
they
Aldi
sell
finds
out.
culture, the Aldi finds aisle culture.
No,
They
because my Aldi's is way on the west side of Edmond, so I don't go over
Stuff
there
sells
much.
out. Stuff sells out.
Yes,
Uh,
it does. I
I
hear
have
that.
another
There are
Aldi find.
whole there are whole reels on that. It's kind of like the Costco stuff, Costco deal, which you also found some stuff at Costco this week.
Yeah, I found some Spanish lavender that accidentally got into my cart. And then, once it's in your car, you have to buy it. But those are going to go on the back step, one on each side. I kind of have like a little matching thing going,
Okay.
and they're so beautiful. But we are not talking about Spanish lavender. We're still on the letter G,
Oh, okay. So let's talk about GMs.
GMs. The common name of GMs is not GM. It's
What is it?
Avens, Avens, Avens. I've never, I've
I
never,
think
never,
maybe
ever.
on I've never heard it called that ever.
No, no. And we'll just
I've heard
briefly.
the one variety is called prairie smoke, which I
Yes,
cannot grow. I've tried.
that is the okay. So let's just talk about GMs because the native GM that people talk about is GM triflorum prairie smoke. It has a pink flower, and I thought, you know what? Carol needs that for her pink garden that doesn't have any room for anything else, but it's kind of like it's going to go in there anyway.
Yeah.
So, just looking that up ever so briefly, it's like, oh, now I need that. But it has a
Does
pink
it,
flower and
did
then
you
like
get it? It's kind of pinky
no, I
purple.
have to go look for it. It's just
Good
on my
luck
list.
finding it. It's hard to find. And I found it twice and I killed it twice and I said, that's enough. So
No,
I
no,
moved
one more
on.
time.
No, I moved on to GM Totally Tangerine and I
Yes,
love that plant.
it is. That's a tough little plant.
Easy to grow. Put it at the front of your border. It only blooms in spring, but boy, does it bloom. And it just gets bigger every year and it's cute. And there's also one called Bananas something. Maybe it's Bananas Foster. I don't know. It's yellow. I've grown it too, but I'm telling you, Totally Tangerine is probably the toughest of the plants.
You can add some orange to your garden really quick with that. And I looked it up on
Soft orange.
yeah, it's not like horrible orange. Totally
It's
tangerine,
like
like this.
orangesicle orange,
It's like the skin of a tangerine.
even lighter. But yes, okay.
But
It's
anyway,
cute.
I did look on the Missouri Botanical Garden, and it is a hybrid. It
Yes.
was hybridized over in England.
Thank you. Thank you, UK people.
Yes,
Sometimes
and
sometimes we hybridize things, sometimes they hybridize things. It's
exactly,
nice. And then the Dutch come in and help too, and so did the Japanese. Those are the
exactly.
primaries in the garden world.
All right, let's. Do you have any other G flowers you want to talk about?
Not today.
All right. So why don't you do a quote, and we'll talk about vegetables that start with G.
No matter what's happening in the world, have your tea. Make your list. Plan your food preparation, read to your children, wash the clothes, do something creative for everyone, and be a light for your home. And you know what? I don't know who said this. It was on a homemaker's page that I
Yeah,
found.
I put a
And
note
I
and
couldn't,
said, "Need to find who said this," and we just left that note there.
who cares? I mean, I think well, I'm not sure. I follow several of those, but that is good advice. That's good advice. You may not be able to change the world, but you can certainly make your corner of it brighter.
Mind your business, take care of your own business, and don't worry about the rest.
And the rest of it will all do what it's going to do, whether you are upset about it or not. I
Exactly.
have one friend who keeps posting, and bless her heart, she's upset. But you know what? This week she went to Bustani Plant Farm, had a great time, and she seemed much happier. Just saying.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
Vegetables, gee, garlic, of
G is for
course.
garlic. We have talked about garlic, and last fall I looked it
Ad
up.
infinitum.
We reviewed The Garlic Companion by Kristen Graves.
A great
Oh,
book.
it is a great book, and it's in the other room. But
It's
anyway,
right there.
oh, so what are we going to say about it? Plant in the fall, harvest midsummer. In my case, like in
Fertilize in
June,
spring. Put some
fertilize in spring.
compost. Yeah, compost. Just put some good compost down around it, and your bulbs will be bigger. And dig it up in summer.
Yeah, and when you order good varieties. Don't order the stuff. Don't buy it at the grocery store and stick it in the ground. You have to peel off the
No.
cloves. Each clove, you plant each clove. And I tell people if you want to know exactly how many bulbs you'll end up with, it's one per clove.
Yeah,
So
which is just the coolest thing ever that it goes from a little clove to a full bulb. And
yes,
I guess we should mention hardneck versus softneck.
I was just thinking
I
about that. We are
I grow
hardneck
mostly
country.
hardneck.
We are hardneck
Because
country.
so we can grow either one. We've talked about that before, but I grow hardneck because you can't really buy it that much in the grocery store. There's a lot more softneck. I have heard that most of the garlic that you see in the grocery store comes from China. My
Yep.
personal thought is I
No.
no, I'm going to buy organic garlic if I buy garlic in the store. And some of the organic stores do carry hardneck garlic. And I actually have planted it from the organic store before. I mean, it's
Yeah.
cheaper to do that.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to tell you as a garden communicator that you're not supposed to do that, but whatever.
Yeah.
Come on,
Whatever.
whatever.
So I haven't grown garlic in a couple years. Maybe I'll make a note to plant some this fall, but maybe I won't. I just don't know
I
yet.
had, there about 2 seasons ago, I said, never again. I'm done. I'm never growing it again. And then I grew it again and I had the best harvest ever. And so now, yeah, I have a ton of it out there. But you know what? I eat a lot of garlic.
Yeah, I don't eat
So
that much garlic, so
I put it in everything. All right, next,
G
green
is
beans.
yes. G is for green beans. We have talked
Ad
about green beans,
nauseum.
something like that. So of course we say bush beans are give you the tenderest beans. Find a variety that works for your garden. In my case, it's Provider is like you can always count on it, except that one year.
Provider, Dragon Tongue, Blue Lake, 274. My husband thinks all green beans are Blue Lake. They're he thought all green beans that were grown in the garden were flat and fuzzy. I was like, no, it was just the variety your grandma grew.
Yes.
So Blue Lake's the one that is so famous in the Green Giant can and the Del Monte can. So those are the ones he likes, and so I always grow him some Blue Lake. But then I grow Dragon Tongue and
Now
Providers sometimes.
you can grow climbing green beans, the climbers.
I have.
They're a little bit tougher than the ones you get from the bush beans, I think.
Mhm.
And
Sometimes stringier, which is the term
stringier.
string bean. You have to de-string them. And I don't want to do that. So I just grow the ones I like. And I mean, the truth is, green beans are pretty easy to grow, except that one year when you and I decided to get all fancy and grow some weird varieties. And we
We
totally
just,
failed that year.
yeah,
Totally.
you just go with your favorites. And the nice thing about green beans, nice big seeds, plunk those babies in the ground. And really, I do have to worry about rabbits eating all the tops. And we've gone through this too, where I put forks up and down the rows, and that keeps the rabbits from eating them because
I
it's
have trouble
just
with deer.
a little barrier. Now, I don't think forks would stop a deer.
No, they would not. So I have alarms set in the potager. And I also put plants in pots that they don't like. Like they really don't like jasmine. So I have a big tall jasmine that's in a pot and I stick it at one end and I stick chairs and I mean I've got stuff stuck all around that potager, but you know what? Whatever. It works. And the deer are gonna be deer. I hate them.
Oh
And there's a
dear.
new, oh yeah, oh dear. Carmen Johnston had a new repellent out there that I need to look up. I can't use it because I looked up the ingredients and it's got blood meal in it and some other
Right.
stuff, but it looked organic, which would be great in your vegetable garden. And she said it really works in her pots and she reapplies it every 45 days. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's not
And
very often.
you could also use netting, the netting I use in my flower garden, my cut flower garden, that helps deter deer because they don't want to put their faces in netting. That's all.
Hmm. Well, I was going
Oh,
to
grow
say,
green beans when it's warm.
yeah, yeah, you want to wait to put those out when the garden is warm. And if
Direct
you,
so.
yeah, you direct sow, and if you don't want to have your harvest all at one time, you can put like a couple of rows every few weeks, which I always think that's exactly what I'm going to do. And then I
Do
don't
you
end
do
up
it?
doing, no,
No.
no, I
We're
just
too
plant
busy.
them.
We're running around like chickens with our heads cut
If
off.
if I was running a little homestead or had a farm stand and I needed to have a continuous crop through half the summer, then I would absolutely plant in succession. And
Oh, and green,
I
yeah,
might.
totally. I mean, I'm lucky if I get two succession. That's it.
Yeah.
Then I'm too busy with other stuff like tying up tomatoes. I had another thought. Oh, you don't have to fertilize green beans because they don't need it. In fact, they add nitrogen back to the soil like peas.
That's right. They're a legume. And one last thing, if you're going to do a yellow or golden colored bean, Goldilocks is a good variety.
Oh, good to know. Also, succession planting is good. Green beans are a good plant to put where you had tomatoes
That
because
is correct.
they add back to the soil. Tomatoes just take, take, take.
In fact, if other than green beans, if you had a place in your garden where the whatever did not produce very well and just seemed not good, following up with green beans in that spot the next year is a good idea, unless it was your green beans. And then you should, I don't know.
But something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you get Mexican bean beetles?
Occasionally. And
I just,
occasionally I also get that kind of mildewy thing if we're really wet. But
yeah, I don't really
I
have too
mean
many
not
problems.
not to no. I mean, no, not until they start to get, they at the end of their moment, they're like kind of yuck, and I just pull them all out and then
Right.
plant something else there. Or I just put compost down and don't worry about it or
There you
mulch.
go. All right, I'm going to do a quote and we're going to talk about a book. Reading is so important, so necessary to the nourishment of mind and spirit that I feel that it should be as seriously ceremonial as a church service. Ideally, we need a comfortable chair with back and arm support and good, well directed light, a rest for the book if it is too heavy to hold comfortably, a small table with our favorite drink at hand, and silence and solitude. It is an ideal that few of us are able to obtain, and that was P.D. James in Time to Be Earnest.
She was really being earnest, wasn't she?
That is her autobiography / year in the life of
Cool.
P.D. James.
So the book on the bookshelf this week is Plants with Superpowers by David Dominy. And so he is a familiar face on several of UK TV's most popular garden and magazine programs. He's an enthusiast for the positive power of plants, and he's constantly discovering and seeking out new and amazing facts about nature. So I wish I had written this book. What a clever, clever way to group plants.
Yeah, because it's like he comes up with all kinds of superpowers. And the thing that I kept thinking about was, you know, if you have young people that are obsessed with, super Marvel characters and all that, and you want to
Mm-hmm.
get them interested in plants and gardening, you could do no worse than to say, hey, did you know? And then, find some of these plants that, can camouflage themselves, can clone themselves, brain food. And you know what, Dee, I'm endeared to this book for one particular chapter.
Violas. What's their superpower?
Pansies, bringer of
Pansies.
thoughts. They're the
Mm-hmm.
bringer of thoughts. Few flowers bring a smile more than pansies.
This was my favorite plant when I was young and just starting out in
Uh huh.
gardening. And it is the prayer plant, which is Maranta leuconura. And it closes its leaves at night. That's why it's called a prayer plant. It's just a beautiful plant. And it's kind of gone back into fashion now because everybody's doing house plants. So that's pretty cool. Oh,
Well,
this is a cool superpower. Deciduous magnolia, which is on page 83, 82, and 83. And its
yeah.
superpower is it's a prehistoric flower. Yes, it's one of the very few, that's what I tell people when they want to get one. I'm like, this is a very cool plant because the flowers are really before we had flying butterflies and flying insects that pollinated, flying pollinators. And so they have a ton of pollen, but they're pollinated by beetles,
Yes.
which
And
is
then,
just a cool superpower.
yes. And then in between, like the different plant profiles, he's got like plants in general. So this is like plants. These are the green pages, I guess. Plants as
Yes.
habitats, plants for cooling
Hmm.
down the city. I've enjoyed looking through this book this week. I think it's worthwhile.
So the plants as habitats, the little pull quote from it is about around a third of Europe's forest dwelling birds probably nest or roost in tree cavities. So think about that. When you see a dead tree, it's not always bad.
Yeah. I I think that, we of course in my like suburban lot or whatever, if somebody has a dead tree, you're like, get rid of it, get rid of it. But they're very there's people that just do whole studies on dead trees and what's living in them,
They
which is
do
a ton.
yeah, which is great. Oh, the ginkgo's superpower is survival because it's one of the
Yeah.
oldest
Yeah,
trees on the planet.
it is.
That it is a cool, this would be a great gift book for someone. I just think it's just a really cool book all the way around.
And maybe
Mine's
if you
backwards because I'm pinned.
no, we're both pinned and they look correct to me, so I think we'll be all right.
Okay, cool.
So, okay, but anyway, that is Plants with Superpowers by David Dumany. And we'd like to thank our friend at Francis Lincoln Press for sending us the review copies. There's the author. All right, you do a quote and we're going to talk about our dirt.
And hope, if it had a secret, would smell like spring, like rain, like something new and alive. Jennifer Rush from the book Reborn. Yes, and it's raining at your house and it's been raining at mine. It's supposed to rain again tonight. We're sunny right now.
Exactly.
Beautiful, beautiful outside. I want to go out there. But I've got to work today. I've got other work to do besides this work. Um,
Exactly.
so our dirt this week I found, which is Italian terracotta versus Vietnamese. So I get a lot of questions about terracotta because terracotta is a classic container element. You probably do too.
Hmm.
And terracotta is beautiful. It does not overwinter well in either of our climates.
Does not.
Even I have a glazed terracotta pot out there that I did leave out on the deck because it was supposed to be frost hardy. It cracked a lot. But the best terracotta in the world is either from Vietnam or it's from Italy. So when you're looking for terracotta, if you want really good hard terracotta, it's not from Mexico. And the reason for this is that the terracotta in Vietnam, the clay that they use is some of the hardest substance on earth. It's considered the very best clay. And some of my pot feet for my pots is from this Vietnamese clay. I don't have any Vietnamese pots. They haven't really made it here to Oklahoma yet. You see mostly Mexican, bring those indoors, and you see Italian, and you see who knows. Italian is also really hard. It comes from really good clay and it's fired a long time. So that's why they're both really good.
And I have a Vietnamese clay pot, and I will tell you that it is very heavy. It's got thick walls. I bet it's about an inch thick.
Mhm.
And it is a set it and forget it because it is a heavy pot. And with dirt added in there, do not plan to move that all the time. And mine has been outside in the wintertime for, I'm going to say, at least 14 years. And
So
it's
it is
still,
frost proof.
oh, it's very frost proof. It's out by my light. And if I remember, I'll take a picture.
Okay. And so we're going to link to some stuff in the newsletter of two different, that one's on Vietnamese pots and one is from Deborah Silver, who's a very famous landscaper, landscape designer, and she has one on Italian terracotta. I have a lot of Italian and it's good. It's a really good quality. I still bring it inside because they're expensive. And so I don't want to leave them out there.
Exactly.
One thing I wish we could find more of at the garden stores is zinc. Zinc pots are lightweight and they're extremely cold hardy, but they're you have to order them online. Like Terrain has them, but we don't have a Terrain in Oklahoma. Do you have a Terrain in Indianapolis?
No, we don't have such fanciness. No.
Terrain is so fancy. So fancy and so expensive, but so fun. All right, so do another quote and we'll go down our rabbit holes.
Ideas are always disturbing, especially new ideas. Most normal, charming, intelligent adults have learned to leave their minds alone and so are immune to new ideas. But not gardeners. These unfortunates are susceptible to every new idea carried by the wings of chance. And that is by Josephine Noose. And
You
she
snuck
wrote,
that one in on me. That's really funny.
I did because I realized that the quote we had there was a repeat. And I thought,
Ah,
I was looking at the Lost Lady stuff to do my presentation this earlier this week to the Herb
mhm.
Society, and that is just a hilarious quote.
It's so true. All it takes is somebody saying, "Look at this new," and we go, "Oh, run over there."
Over here, no, over there. Uh,
Especially this time of year. All right, I'll do my rabbit hole first. Where's yours? Okay, I see it. Okay, so I was looking for pot feet for my pots. You can find a lot of them on Etsy, and I found on Etsy a potter, and I was also doing the dirt. I was finding information for dirt. So I was all about terracotta last week. You can find both glazed pot feet and terracotta pot feet and metal pot feet for that matter on Etsy pretty well. Really cute ones. I bought some frogs. They're really cute.
nice.
And they're from Vietnam, so I'll take a picture of them. But while I was doing that, I also found a potter in Georgia who makes terracotta from Georgia clay, and her two pots are arriving at my house today. And I was going to put two of my new pelargoniums in them. Unfortunately, those came before the pots came, so those went into different pots, and I'm actually going to put a succulent in one of them. Then I also found a series of talks that P. Allen Smith did that are on YouTube, and they're so good. And I read the first one read the first one, watched the first one on peonies. And as you know, I know Alan and I really, really like him. I think he's a very nice man. And I've been to his place many times and got to go as a blogger twice, and that was fun. And it was just fun to see him, and it was fun to see his information.
Yeah.
He had a group of people there from somewhere, and he's always wanting to impart information. He's an encyclopedia of gardening information. And so he was talking about peonies, and I think I even learned something new, which I thought I knew everything about herbaceous.
That's interesting. And I haven't seen any of P. Allen Smith stuff for a long, long time. And so it's like, and I sometimes wonder if people have stopped posting or if the algorithm has just decided enough, Carol, you don't need to see any more of that. I just never know.
I think he's doing some different things right now because I went and looked him up to see because that sent me down
Uh-huh.
a rabbit hole. And I had heard that Moss Mountain Farm wasn't in as good a shape as it had been in past years. I don't know if that's true this year or not. I know he's doing some work with building some homes in the area, and I didn't look into it enough to see, but he's posting about that, and he's posting about some other stuff too. And I know he's still planting at Mouse Mountain Farm because he planted like 300 peonies.
As one
And he
does.
has, yeah, as one does if you're P. Ellen Smith or Martha Stewart, somebody like that. But he also planted, he has Daffodil Hill, and
Uh-huh.
there's thousands of daffodils. So it was
And
just
does
very enjoyable in the
yeah.
morning from someone who's in Arkansas.
Yeah. Doesn't he have heritage chicken varieties too? Different breeds
Oh,
of chickens?
not, the poultry, I can't remember what he used to call it, but it was his heritage poultry yard that was so beautiful. It burned down in 2023, burned to the ground, and he lost all of his chickens.
Oh, that's
I have
terrible.
heard, well, yeah, it is terrible because he had some breeds that he was reintroducing, and he's a big part of that heritage poultry group. So I know that he was getting more chickens. I don't know what happened with that. I haven't talked to him lately. That's kind of, it's not like we're buddies. I mean, I just know him. Every once in
Okay.
a while he'll message me on Facebook. Very, very seldom. And he promotes my stuff, which is very nice of him.
That is very nice of him. So down in my rabbit hole, so after I talked to the Herb Society of America, I might have accidentally joined the Herb Society of America. Yes, you're looking at the newest
Of
member of the Herb Society of America.
course you are.
But
I would
behind
have
their
too.
yeah, but behind the paywall on their website for members, they've got a couple of garden clubs, book clubs that you
Hmm.
can join, and I might join into like one or two of the book clubs. So that's kind of fun. And then
When will you have the time? But
just
okay.
just stop it. I looked at some of the books I'd already read, so I could just pop in. I'm like, oh, I already read that.
I'm part of a book club and I've read three of the books we've read this year. Thank God. Okay. No, I mean, I'd already read them.
Yeah. So I went looking for one lost lady of garden writing because somebody asked me about Helen Morgenthau Fox. So I went looking for her, and then I remembered that she's the one who came up with this library display in 1927 at the New York Public Library, and they had listed like 600 garden books. So of course, and I remembered that, and I've got it bookmarked, and I kept reading this list of 600 garden books, and I found a garden writer from like 1926,
Hmm.
and it's actually sisters. I found sisters that
Oh,
write.
wow. Wow. There
So
you go.
that's
Sorry, I'm distracted because there's two male cardinals right outside the window, and they're
uh-huh.
having a big argument about something. They haven't flown at each other yet, but they're making these little noises I've never heard cardinals make. And one of them keeps fluffing his feathers, and the other
Yeah.
one will fly away, and then it comes right back and fusses at it some more. Like, okay, me
Well,
too.
that reminds me that before Easter, there was a robin that was trying to build a nest on top of the light by the back door. And
Yeah,
then on that Saturday, that door was open
as they
because
do.
that it was so hot in the house. We just opened the door. And so I think that robin got really irritated because, couldn't build its nest anymore. And I don't think it's tried to anymore.
Well, it moved somewhere else.
It said,
So
this doesn't look like a good location after all. Garden
Oh,
commissions.
I have dirt for next week, so remind me after we're
Okay.
done.
I made a
It's
note.
about monarchs.
Okay.
Okay, garden commissions. Mine is short. Keep keep planting. Start setting up my drip irrigation. Fix the leak that is in the cut flower beds that's down inside the bed itself because that's all on automatic. Yeah.
Right.
So I've got to fix that leak, which means I got to get Bill out there and I got to dig it out and then he's going to fix it. And then mulch and keep cleaning out the pond basket and keep adding plants to the pond. But by the way, in the pond, happily, they're the water lilies, the ones that
Uh-huh.
are hardy. They've come up and I have finally created the conditions that they like. Because water
Cool.
lilies should cover part of your pond. Well, water lilies don't like movement in the water. They don't like to be in shade. They're prissy little girls. And so I found them their own little prissy spot, cut back part of the branch. I mean, I think I finally made those little darlings happy. Feed the fish. That's the other
Good.
thing.
Good.
That's all. You?
I thought I'd just sit around and read for the next week or so and,
Nice
just take it
try.
easy. Actually, it is starting. I need to get out all the flower seeds and get started on the flower seeds. Some of those need to get started early. I got to keep the tomatoes and peppers going. They're doing great. Plant out the onions. Weed, weed, weed. Mow, mow, mow. I still haven't mowed in back because I want the crocus foliage to really ripen. And I was out there this morning before the rain. I thought I really do need to mow this now, or it's going to be trouble. And also, the big exciting news is Noel Kingsbury and Annie Guilfoyle do garden masterclass
Yes, they do.
on Thursdays. For us on Eastern time, it's 1 o'clock, but it's in the evening in Great Britain. And their guest next week is me on May the 1st.
I am so proud of you.
Thank you. And I'm going to be talking about Lost Ladies of Garden Writing again. And so we're going to link to their events page because you just click on the link and you can go right into the meeting and be a part of it. And she said,
Are
it's
you
early.
chuffed?
I'm chuffed. It's early evening in Great Britain. So she said, we don't get tons of people coming in, but they'll get a few. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then
Okay, so for our listeners,
yeah.
for our audience, tell them who Noel Kingsbury and Annie are.
So Noel Kingsbury is a prolific
He's
British
a big deal.
big writer, big author. And he's partnered with Annie Guilfoyle, who writes all kinds of articles and stuff to
They're
have
both big deal.
garden master class. And so he saw my Substack for Lost Ladies of Garden Writing and reached out and said, we need to have you on the show. And so it'll be a fun talk. I'm going to pick about 10. I'm going to pick some that have some British influence, like my favorite Buckner Hollingsworth. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll be
Cool.
working on that. So maybe I will be sitting around reading, trying to make sure I have my wits about me for Thursday.
My famous friend Carol. Good job.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's it for this week, Dee. I think we've
I
gone
do
on
too.
and I think we've gone on for more than an hour. So I'm going to wrap us up.
Gosh, guys, I'm sorry. Okay.
Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time, unless we take a break.
However, if you subscribe to our free newsletter, you get a link to listen to the podcast a whole day early and links to the products we discuss. Some of these are affiliate links. Plus, go over to YouTube and see us in person. Full episodes show up on Tuesdays.
And if you want to help support us, use our affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we're in a small commission and it costs you nothing extra.
Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or make a one-time donation through PayPal.
Thank you to everyone who has done so. It helps us pay for podcast hosting.
And it was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.